Hi, and welcome to this 4NAV coffee break. My name is René Brummel. I'm a product specialist at 4NAV and I will be your presenter today. As this coffee break is live, you can ask your questions via the GoToWebinar question window. We will answer them at the end of the coffee break. Today, we're going to revolutionize matrix tables for your Business Central reports. A while ago, we did a coffee break video on how to add matrix tables in your Business Central reports. We saw that this was possible, but especially for large tables, it was a lot of work. Today, we're going to use JavaScript to create a matrix table with HTML. We will start where the previous coffee break ended. You can find a link to that recording at 4nav.com/coffeebreak. Please review that if necessary. To demonstrate revolutionizing matrix tables, I'm going to use these steps. Prerequisites, what do I need to get going? In step 2, I will add a basic HTML part. In step 3, I will create the matrix header and line titles. In step 4, I will create the matrix content. Let's start with the first step. Today, I will revolutionize matrix tables in a Business Central SaaS tenant with the Business Central 2022 Wave 1 release. I've installed the 4NAV customizable report pack and I've executed the step-by-step wizard from the assisted setup to get started. Of course, everything I do today is also available on the Business Central on-premise environment. I also have the 4NAV Designer installed on my PC. The 4NAV Designer can be downloaded from the 4NAV website. The first thing we need to do is to create a new group footer in our report with some basic HTML. What we need are the basic document object model, or DOM, with some basic formatting instructions. So let's move over to Business Central. And in Business Central you'll find that for the order I've already got my matrix starting point. And for a quick recap, let's go back to the sales order that we will be playing with today, which is this one. So in this order you will notice that I have a bunch of items, all with the same item numbers. I'm using item 1004 and 1005, which are custom items that I've created. And all of these items have different variants, and these variants consist of two parts, the size and the color. And that's consistent all over the database. So what I wanted in the previous coffee break was a matrix table where I have a matrix of size and color, and that will show me how many of each I have. And if I preview the report, you will notice that I get this nice matrix table where I have 8 large blue, 5 medium blue, etc, etc, etc. So we have that, and we want to customize that. To customize it, let's go back to my 4NAV reports. I'm just going to quickly copy my layout. Let's call this matrix HTML and I will enable it. And let's open it in the 4NAV Designer. And in the 4NAV Designer you will notice that I've got my big matrix table part here, and to get the data I want to display in my matrix table, I have on my onAfterGetRecord a function add matrix data, and this function will add, I've got a header titles array, and all of my header titles will be added into this array. I have my line titles array, and all of my line titles will be added in this array. And finally I have a quantities array, and all of the quantities with color and size information are stored in this array as objects. How I've done this is all explained in the first part of the matrix table webinar. So if you need a recap, please have a look at that. But basically I end up with 3 arrays that I can use in my table, where I can use, for instance, the line titles array to display my line titles. Now the problem we noticed when we create these big arrays is that I need to create a line per possible line that I may use in my array. So if I'm going to use a table which may have 50 or 100 tables, I would need to have 50 or 100 of these lines and columns. That's a lot of work, and that's something that we would like to automate. To automate that, like I said, we are going to use an HTML table, and we're going to build that HTML inside 4nav on the fly. So the first thing we will do is let's hide the current group footer. Of course, I need grouping to group my lines per item. I will insert a new group footer and move that up, and let's quickly copy my columns. So I need that, and then I need a text box. A simple plain text box will do to render the HTML, and that text box is obviously going to have its can grow property set to true. So I'll set can grow to true, and of course the can grow property of my group footer must be set to true as well. And that means my text box that will contain the HTML will grow, and the footer which will contain the table will grow to the size that's required by my HTML. Then, like I said, I'm going to need some basic HTML. To do that, I will open my onPre-report JavaScript, and I will create a new function in there. And I will do some really fast typing. I've created a new function called add_DOM, and this function returns a basic text object which is an HTML, which has HTML text. The backslashes at the end of the line mean that my text variable can span multiple lines in my editor, which means I can change the way it looks. Otherwise I would have a big line with all sorts of HTML in there, and that's difficult to read. And what I have in here is a doctype HTML, which tells 4nav that this needs to be rendered as HTML. Then of course I have an HTML open and closing tag. Then I have a header, HTML header opening and closing tag, and in there I have some basic styling. This is just done by a cascading style sheet, or CSS. Works the same as any CSS on any website, and in there I've done some basic styling. So for the matrix ID that I'm going to add later on, I'm going to say font family, the font size, I've got a border collapse, and I've got some margins. And then for my data columns, I'm going to say I want to align my text centered and the width needs to be 50. And for my caption columns, I'm going to say my width needs to be 50. So just some plain basic HTML with some plain basic CSS in there. And finally, my content variable is going to contain later on my HTML table, and that's going to be placed after the header, just inside my HTML. This function I can call inside my text box. So if I go back to my text box, I'm going to call add_DOM, and for now I'm going to call it with a placeholder text. And once I've done that, I can preview my report. Now I'll preview it with the order that I've demoed earlier on. You will notice right now that my old table is gone, my old matrix table, and in the place of that I've got my placeholder text. You will notice the placeholder text is not formatted to any format because I haven't specified any HTML tags in here. All I've got is a placeholder text. This is HTML, which is now rendered in my 4nav report. So that's a great place to start. There we go. So now we have the HTML. The second thing we need to do is to create the HTML, the matrix table headers. And to do this, we will write some JavaScript in order to determine the matrix header and row titles. So let's do some really fast typing again. Move back to 4nav. And in 4nav, I'm going back to my onPre-report report trigger. That's where I usually place functions, and the reason I place them there is that, first of all, I can use them all over my report. And secondly is that I can inherit these on-pre-report JavaScript triggers to other reports, which means I could place this stuff inside my sales template and inherit it into all of my sales documents. So obviously for this coffee break that's not necessary. We're just working in the order report. So in this on-pre report I've added two new functions. The main function is the create table function. That is what I'm going to be calling from my text box. You will notice this create table contains a caption, which is going to be used for my table caption. I've got my headers, which are going to be the header array, which gives me the headers that I want to display. The lines, which are going to give me the line headers that I want to use, and the columns, which are going to contain the quantities array, which are going to be the quantity per color size combination. In this function, if I go back to front, start at the back, I'm going to return an HTML table, which has the ID matrix, which specifies, which comes back to our matrix CSS. So this CSS is going to be used for this specific table. And this table has as its content the table variable. And this table variable I'm going to build up. I'm going to create a table variable. And this table variable is going to contain the first line of my table. The first line of my table is going to contain all of the headers. So I've got the first header, which is the caption. And then I'm going to call my other function, which will create a caption per header, which is this function, which contains a simple loop. And for each header in my headers array, I'm going to add this line in my header. I'm going to add a table header column with class is data, which specifies that I'm going to use this bit of CSS, and the content is going to be the header. Then moving back to my create table function, I've got another loop which will do something for each line in my lines. So for each line header, I'm going to do something roughly similar. I'm going to add a row variable, and inside this row I'm going to add a column with the class caption for each of my line headers. That I will add to my table, which means that when I return this little bit of HTML, it will be a fully built table with headers and line columns. So let's see if that works. I will preview. Of course it doesn't work, because I may have added the functions. Of course I didn't add the function call to my function. So let's remedy that. Let's replace my add DOM with the placeholder text with the add DOM, which I'm going to call with the result of my create table function. You will notice I call create table with my caption, which is color size, header titles, line titles, and quantities. Let's see if this works better. That looks better. So now I've got my color size caption, and then I've got large, medium, small, blue, green, red and yellow, and of course my different colors for item 1005. The quantities are not there yet because we haven't added the code yet, but what you do notice is that the text is formatted according to the font family and sizes that we specified inside the CSS bit, inside the style bit of our HTML. And you will also notice, you may notice, that the column sizes are as specified. If I wouldn't have specified any column sizes, my columns would be as big as the text that would have been placed in there. So that's step 2. let's go to our fourth and final step, because now we have all of the headers of my lines and columns. We need to add the individual cell values, and to do that we need to tell 4nav how to add these specific columns for the individual cell values. So let's move back to the 4nav designer and go back to our scripts in the beginning. Now you will have noticed that I create a line for each of the column line headers that I've got in my array. And inside these lines, obviously I need to add the specific column values inside the lines. And to do that, I'm going to add another loop. And in this loop, I'm going to say for each header in the headers array, so for each headers array, I'm going to find the quantity that I'm going to display by calling the columns.find function. The columns.find is a function in JavaScript that lets me find an item in an array by a specific value of the underlying JSON object. So I've got my column size is header and column color is line, the specific headers I want. That will return to me the quantity, and then I will append my row with the TD class is data, and then I've got a very simple bit of data that says if I have a quantity, use the quantity, and if I don't have a quantity for this specific color size combination, just return an empty value. So that will be appended to my row, that will be appended to my table and added and displayed in my report. So let's try this. There we go. Now you will notice I have my colors and my sizes, and my blue is 8 large, 5 medium, etc. I've checked these and I know they're correct. Please feel free to play around with this and have a look at this yourself. So let's recap what we just did. The first thing we did was to add a new group footer section and add an HTML text box on it. We noted that we can simply write HTML code and 4nav will render that. The second thing we did was to dynamically create the table headers and footers, the table headers and line headers with JavaScript. Now, those of you that have played around with JavaScript and HTML before will have noticed that we are not able to manipulate the document object model directly using the document function, something you can do inside HTML on a web page. Inside 4nav you can't do that because we don't have the document function available. So we need to write and modify the HTML manually. Finally, we added the individual columns for our table, and we used some CSS to style the object. The layout I've created plus the JavaScript I have used are available on GitHub, or they will be when I check all of this stuff in immediately after this webinar, so you can find it there and have a look at it and play with it for yourself. So let's have a look and see if we have any questions. Can't see any questions in the question window. If you do have a question, please ask it in the GoToWebinar question window. For now, I'm going to wrap up this coffee break. If you want to know more about 4nav, or if you want to download the 4nav Designer and convert it, please visit our website. If you want to install 4nav in Business Central Cloud, please visit the Microsoft App Source. And you can watch more videos about 4nav on our YouTube channel. If you have any questions about 4nav, please email them to support@4nav.com. For a full list of upcoming and recorded coffee breaks, please visit 4nav.com/coffeebreak. And for today, thank you very much for listening and goodbye.